Mr. Mogi?
Meggie.
Meggie.
Yep.
Meggie. Wow, that was way off.
I've
But
been dealing with that my whole life, so I don't take
Meggie.
it
Well,
too
it's
serious. Pretty much
M-O-E, right?
everybody goes for just Dean. Dean
Okay,
works, yeah.
Dean, Mr. Dean. That's what we'll go with today. Well, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to come out. As the holistic health and fitness program director for the Dagger Brigade, right? So that's H2F for short. You virtually just make sure you take all the soldiers, you bottle them up, and out come these massive like physical specimens to like fight our nation's wars. That is what you do, correct?
That is the ultimate goal, yep. To make soldiers like the best possible. Be lethal, be ready, be healthy.
That's right. Oh, is that your catchphrase?
No.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I asked somebody about a catchphrase, and so I want to make sure.
So ours at Dagger is best in the Army.
Best
That
in
is
the
the
Army.
ultimate goal for our team is always, because it's not like a set field goal post. It's like a constantly
best.
evolving thing.
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask you, are you the best in the Army? How do you measure
We're working
that?
toward it. I don't have a
Okay.
tangible measurement. That's the whole
But I
goal.
will tell
It's more
you-
the mentality than the actual like finite finish line.
Which is good because mentality is half the battle, I think, especially with fitness. But before we really dig into your H2F life, you were once a soldier, always a soldier, as some would say, but like you were in the Army prior to. So what'd you do?
Correct. So I did an initial enlistment straight out of high school. I like being active, like staying very busy. I was not the best student, to be honest, and so I didn't really want to pursue college straight out of high school. I knew I wanted to do something else, and obviously OEF was going, and so I thought like that was an adventure. That was something respectable that I could do. So
What year was this?
So I joined in 2005, and then I just did one enlistment, got stop loss for an extra year, so I kind of like put the end of my Army career. But a couple of deployments during the surge to Iraq, and then we got an Afghanistan deployment very shortly after that. And once I got done, that's when I got out, had grown a little bit, and that's when I went to college and stuff.
What'd you do while you were in the Army?
So I was a Fort Observer, 13 Fox.
Okay.
An airborne unit up out of Alaska. So being a Kansas kid, I had one uncle who was in the Army, and he was at Fort Bragg, so I thought that was it. I got orders to go to Fort Bragg. Like, here we go. And after basic AIT and jump school, I got orders to Kansas that rerouted me to Alaska.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
How'd you like that?
I was furious when I got it, but now I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yep.
It's incredible up there. The people were awesome. It's really far away, but the training, everybody that I was surrounded with, like really made that experience.
That's awesome.
Obviously, outside of the deployments, a little difficult, but just the whole like totality of my experience up there was incredible.
That's great. Second best place outside of Fort Riley to be, I would imagine, would
Yeah.
be Alaska.
I mean, I think, on that tangent, a lot of people don't look at Fort Riley as their number one either. But if you ask my team, I've had 2 people on my H2F team re-enlist to stay, to be here longer. So I think we can give them a better life. It's just not overtly as obvious as most people think.
I would 100% agree with you. So we tell people that all the time. When the Army does these marketplaces for officers like twice a year, right? And so I got to interview a couple, officers a couple years ago or about a year ago to try to get them to come, here. And I was like, hey, like I'm not gonna lie to you. Fort Riley, if you're looking for like, it's great. I was like, I always live with it's great, but you have to like understand that it's a community of greatness, not just you come to this installation because the installation inside the walls it's the same as any other installation. We have our pools, we have our places like the Warrior Zone or whatever that you go to. Like those places are everywhere to like give the entertainment on the post, but Manhattan, Junction City, I mean Kansas City right down the road. I know it's a little farther. I was like, that's where our, like the community really can stretch to, and I was like, it's really hard like to convince you that we are in the middle of Kansas, which seems like we're in the middle of nowhere, but truly like there's a ton to do here. I mean, Manhattan itself is, with K-State there, with all the things that they can do, it's, I don't know, it's just like way, now I feel like I'm selling it like right now to you and you're like from there.
I already live here. So you're good.
But so where are you from originally then?
So I'm actually from about 40 minutes away from here.
Okay.
There's a little small town called Paxico.
Okay.
There's a cheese plant out there by Alma, and there's like a winery off of I-70.
I drive by that street sign every
Okay,
time we go to
yep.
my wife's house in famous house in KC.
So yeah, so being here close, when Fort Riley started opening up, when I kind of started transitioning out of college football, and this opened up, and there wasn't probably as many applicants for that as well, and so I was very fortunate to make that transition. I'd been eyeballing this for quite a while. It's something I really want to kind of get back to, and yeah. coming back to Kansas kind of offered that. Plus being close to the family and things like that, it goes a long way.
So when you come out of the Army and you're trying to decide, like, did you already have the plan to go into, I don't want to say sports medicine because I don't know what it is, what you could clarify, but like, what did you want to go into as far as like when you like said, you know what, I'm done with the Army, I want to go to my next
That's a great
thing.
question. I had no idea, to be
Perfect.
completely honest.
Most people are like that, yeah.
I said I was stop lost, and that just kind of like put a finite end to my Army career. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Like that was just like, okay, I knew I'm done with this. I'm going to move to something else. And so I actually picked North Carolina off the map. On my mid tour from Afghanistan, I went and checked out 4 different colleges, and I found the one that I liked. Went back, applied, and didn't get in. So I was.
You actually did a good job of building. Like I went back, I had this plan, and then that was.
I promise, in real life, it was just as like highs and lows.
Yeah.
So didn't get in, got mad, moved out anyway. So moved to the Durham, Chapel Hill area. I had liked UNC Chapel Hill the most. I actually didn't realize it was such a good school. I didn't realize it was so hard to get into.
Yeah.
And so moved out there. I went to a technical college for 2 years, and they had these programs. If you could stay at a certain percentage of your class, it could get you automatically into it.
Okay.
So I went to the tech school, and then I went over to UNC and finished my degree there.
Which was in?
So exercise and sports science, so kinesiology, physiology.
What led you to that? Like why? Like what's what piques your interest in that? Is it just like something like, I was always working out when I was in the Army. I always was being relatively fit, and so I just thought that'd be where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
Like what drives you to do that?
So I played sports my whole life. Like here being in Kansas, like you said, like that's just kind of what the mentality was. We played sports year round: football, basketball, baseball. I wrestled a little bit, ran track when I wasn't good enough to start playing
jack of
baseball.
all trades,
it was very like an active lifestyle. And so when I got out of the Army and started going to college, I actually was going to go for nutrition. But at Carolina, you had to have a master's degree to even sit for the test to get a job.
Okay.
And like that's not a deal breaker, but I was already older coming out of the military, and I didn't want to kind of place that limitation. So I moved over to exercise and sports science. I liked working out. Like it's always something I've enjoyed, which kind of came hand in hand with having to train all the time. And so I moved over to that, and I got an internship working with football. And then fast forward 10 years, I just stayed there at UNC, multiple coaches, just got to be part of really what high performance looks like, working with all the different realms, not just strength and conditioning, excuse me, the athletic trainers, the dietitians, we had sports psychs coming in, even the admin, and then football coaches, which are their own entity in themselves, like working and getting to see kind of that whole program view. Although I love being a strength coach and being wild and ripping nose torque and energy drinks and doing all that stuff, like that's what I really started to enjoy. And when H2F started coming around, that caught my eye, like because I still had obviously emotional ties here to the military. Like my separation was just, like I said, I had to do that in that moment in time. But once I saw that I could link those two things in and have a little bit better life, with the family and everything like that, like that's when I started pursuing these positions.
Well, you just kind of it piques some curiosity in a bunch of different directions there. So first is, as you're relatively fit in the military. You just said you like to work out, so I'd imagine you did go to the gym quite a bit. And then you go and actually go to school, which teaches you kind of like the science behind what you're doing in the gym. And maybe you know this, maybe not, but what was the kind of something that you took from those classes that you were like, man, I'm doing this wrong, or like, oh, that's what I need to be doing to get better outputs, at the gym.
So the big piece is every muscle magazine, most internet articles, most things you're doing is all hypertrophy, big muscles mean everything. Where the reality is actual high performance and human performance is not just hypertrophy and big muscles. It actually can be very limiting and lead you to higher chances of injury. And so it's more about movement patterns, power-based movements, things that help you move well to do the task that you're going to be asked to do. And so everybody's job's different. Like sitting in these chairs has a different wear and tear than, our injury rates are different here now for our maintainers compared to our light infantry people as well as the tanks. Like it all looks different.
Yeah.
And so to continue to just chase a big bench press or big biceps is actually really, really limiting. And so I already
You're
knew
hurting my
kind of the old
feelings.
school, well, you can still do it if that makes you feel good, but yeah, that shouldn't be the crux of what you try and do on the day to day.
So then when you come into this job, and let's be honest, like that's what we see a lot. Whenever we go to the gym, I mean, I could be wrong. There could be people out there like, no, I swear I'm working my, my my fast twitch muscles. Like, what is, we just see people, they're at the squat machines, they're at the bench press, they're like doing the three major movements, like the three major lifts. So what would you try to say? Like, obviously, still do those things. I think deadlift is very important. I think it's very good. I think it's a very good lift. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But like, what would you like? What do you usually do to tell people like to add to their workout or whatever, or to add to their routine to ensure that they're getting this maximum like fitness level?
So movement is medicine. So those are all great exercises to build resiliency within your body, to build strength and like durability within tissues, muscles, tendons, things all like that. But the reality is if you live in very small ranges of motion, anytime you get out of that range of motion, that's when you have the higher chance of injury. And so in the Army, we run a lot. We ruck a lot. Well, if you look at the lower body mechanics, those are very similar. And so if you're only living in that short range, as soon as you get outside, you're just setting yourself up. So you think about how many people who've been around the military for a long time, oh, my knees are killing me. My knees are killing me. Well, that's because in the day-to-day life, as soon as you get outside of that small range that you constantly train, you're right. You're dealing with either compromised or less resilient tissue. And so the more I can get people to bend and do things like that, it just goes a long way. It's not a flexible muscle. Like you can't even flex cardio. But like these types of things, like it's okay to have good energy systems. And the more that they can move, pick something up off the ground without it hurting, that ultimately is going to be long-term health, long-term longevity. And that's what we want to see out of soldiers. Whether you're doing one enlistment or you're going to do your 20 and then move on or even farther than that, I'd rather see people walk out of it like in one piece.
So I'm gonna ask you to be a little bit more specific here. So like specifically, we're at the gym working out. We have let's just call it leg day, right? So we're doing leg day, which means we're gonna do some squats. Maybe somebody's gonna throw in some lunges. We're like those different types of movements. Like what would you say throw into leg day to make sure you're actually getting a full range of motion, like you're actually putting some more stress on whatever ligaments, joints, or muscle groups that you would not normally do outside of like a normal leg day.
Okay, so a few different things. One, putting some emphasis on the hinge pattern. Med ball throw, is it hardly anybody's favorite? Does everybody like maxing that? No, not really. And it's because most people don't hinge very well, but the hinge is a normal movement pattern. So if you're always living in the squat realm, but you're not doing the hinge, it's a huge disservice to yourself. So that's one. The next is always living in these bilateral stances where both feet are down. Like very little that you do on the day-to-day is just with set feet. And so incorporating more single leg things forces you to bend in ways that you won't normally do, but tremendous amount of benefit to that and a lot of resilience that comes to the tissues whenever you can do those type of things. I think that is probably the best. I really like reverse lunges. I really like rear foot elevated, like Bulgarian split squats, things like that, which doesn't require a ton of resistance, which means you can get a lot of benefit out of just your body weight and then progress from there.
That's actually, I'm glad you said that. So obviously, I think mentally speaking, everyone likes to see heavy weight, and I know you talked about that just a little bit already. But I guess I don't want to say convince me, but like convince me that body weight is more than enough, or at least to get the movement down, right? I guess I don't know exactly how I want to word this, but I guess what I'm trying to say is doing body weight workouts still going to do enough for you that you need to, or obviously some weight would always be good. Like if you're doing a Bulgarian split squat, right, holding either some kettlebells or some dumbbells would be easier, like better and more weight than natural body weight. But people don't like to do that because you're only grabbing like 10s or 20s versus going to the squat rack where you're like, oh yeah, I squatted like 350 pounds a day. Like that's awesome. But you're not like, are you getting enough out of that? Like vice versa, long term or short term or whatever.
So I'll flip that question to you. Why do people like to lift heavy?
I think it looks cool.
Minus
To be honest,
ego.
I think it's it looks cool. We think that is the maximum output that like we are achieving, right? So if I go and do I don't know, like 100 just body weight squats where where I'm gonna go all the way down, like I'm gonna actually stress the like almost butt touch the ground all the way up and stress that range of motion, versus I'm gonna go squat 250, 300 pounds, but I'm only going down to 90 and I'm getting so I'm not being very explosive either. You know, both of those maybe have their benefits. I'm not saying they don't, but as far as preventing long-term injury and having that like that when, like you said, like it doesn't hurt when you pick something up. I just don't feel like people think about that. I think we have very short-term memories as far as like 20 years down the road, versus there's this competitive nature we have in the military, and I need to like be able to maintain like this certain level of like weight, and I think that's why people don't want to. And maybe I could be wrong. If you're not that person, I'm really sorry, but that's what I see.
So, how I view it is, so strength is one of the easiest things to actually develop. And so, whenever you're lifting heavy, the benefit of when you're doing that is you get this tangible positive outcome. If I know if I lift this, I can lift a little bit more the next day, and the next day I can see that progress.
Right.
I think one of the biggest frustrations with most training plans is I go, I do something, but I don't see the benefit necessarily. But when you lift heavy, because it's one of the easier traits, it shows up a lot easier. And so being able to sell what the positive outcome is in a way that a soldier can understand, like that is the ultimate goal. So now we take that down to our single leg. If I can get the movement pattern first, then it's pretty easy to progressively overload. So starting with a body weight where you can still walk out without being crippled, that's a win. That's a win.
Yeah.
And then if you can get through that phase, now you move into the next phase. You start adding resistance, or you add in some sort of power base, which I think is another thing that we really missed. We're so good at going long forever. Like I've been in the fight. It pays to be able to run fast when you want to run fast.
Right.
And so I think that's a bit of a miss because it's harder to train. It's not as intuitive for most people who don't have that kind of ex-phys kind of background. And so that's one of the things that the strength coaches are really getting out, trying to get visible with across the board, is these things that probably are intuitive to people, they just don't know how. And so kind of getting that education piece out there. But yeah, I know that's a long way around it, but there's more than one way to progress besides just weight.
Because I was also going to say the intensity with those initial movements, it's not a high intensity workout, or I mean, you could make it, I guess, but to learn those movements and to get that down, to be able to kind of, I guess, progress into, as I want to say, like an intermediate or expert level, I guess, to put it in simple terms, of working out in that way. It's not sexy, right? Like you are going slow and you kind of need to go slow because, again, you don't want to hurt yourself. And that's another thing. Like when we show up, we get, you get your 30 to 45 minutes or whatever it is a day to work out for PT. And you don't really want to waste it just like looking, like where it looks like you're just stretching, or where it looks like you're just doing some weird movements. But in reality, like, you need to start somewhere to build those movements. And it's not, I mean, I guess, I don't know if that's what you deal with a lot with soldiers, or if it's more like they are more welcome to this thing that you're trying to get them to do.
I think it's a bit of both. We are going to forever be dealing with the Army culture, and that's been around for a long time. I think it helps, the consistency of that helps persist through the ebbs and flows of society. So I don't think wholesale that is wrong that the Army has its whole culture, but we have to meet them in the middle. Young people need more information. They have access to more information. And it kind of puts the onus on the leaders, like, you can't be afraid of that. To me, you lean into that. Like it gives you an opportunity to show that you do know what you're talking about and you are the subject matter expert. And so it is interesting dealing with kind of the people who've been around for a long time to maybe people who know more. For us putting out our subject matter experts with the athletic trainers and strength coaches, like there has to be a little bit of give and take. If I come in and say everything you do is wrong and everything I know is right, like I'm going to be sitting in my office doing nothing a lot of days. So it's kind of finding that nuance that's best for the soldiers. Like, soldiers are number one. That's all that we care about, is how can we help soldiers. And if that looks different today than tomorrow, that's best in the Army. We just keep moving forward.
We're best in the Army. I like how you just threw that in there. So I'm going to ask you a pretty controversial question, and I want you can't just be like, well, they're both important, because that's boring. So if I was to say, ask you, which is more important, doing cardio, like running endurance, biking, or whatever, or going to the gym and working on resistance and strength, what is the most important and why?
Okay, they're both important.
Oh my
You're not
gosh, I
gonna
knew
give
you were
me-
going to say
So
that.
here's
No,
what
you have to choose the most important, and then you can say, but, because obviously we can't ignore the other one.
The CAB PD, one of his favorite sayings is, strong things don't break. So being able to do the resistance exercises that puts, again, that durability within all the tissues that allows you to stay healthy will allow you to do everything else. So that is very important. But at the same token, if you're not in shape, we deal with body composition issues, we deal with cardiovascular issues. All that is part of holistic health and fitness.
Oh
so you're
my
not going to
gosh.
get me to pick one,
Oh
because
my
it all
gosh.
matters. Like in your diet, everything comes into play. If you pick one single parameter to chase all the time, I know it's not cool for your podcast. You're just going to be limiting yourself. So you got to take care of the person.
I appreciate that, and I think, I mean, obviously, a lot of these things are more nuanced, and I'm trying to paint you into the corner here. So, now does that? I don't want to say this changes. Obviously, I think like cardiovascular and strength is important throughout your whole life. But does that change at a certain point? I guess, like, at what age group do you see? Because I mean, you hear it all the time. Like, I'm 35 years old or whatever, and so no, I'm just getting older. I'm like, well, are you, or like, have you just been running your whole military career? You kind of do the gym, and so like now when you like do these other workouts or whatever, it's sore, or vice versa. Like you can't run, you can't keep up for as long of endurance because, well, you've just been in the gym the whole time, you've never been practicing your cardio. But is there a certain point in where you kind of tell people, hey, you need to shift? You are getting a little older. You've been focusing on whatever, and so like you need to shift your plan at what? I guess I don't know if I'm asking that clear enough.
So I don't know that I necessarily have a delineated age where that happens. You could certainly argue who you are in your early 20s is not who you're going to be in your early 30s and
That's
not
fair.
your early 40s. And so I think the importance that we can give soldiers is, it's probably an oversimplification. I just need them to care. If you just listen a little bit and be cognizant of the food that you're putting in your 20s, that time where you're going to really feel the decline is probably going to be just a little bit later. If you chase the booze, go hard, like do everything, and I'm not telling people how to live their lives, but if that is the crux of who you are, you're going to feel those aches and pains and everything much sooner than what it should be. Everybody's genetics is different, their hormone paths and those changes are going to be different.
Right.
But the lifestyle choices is what's going to extend that time or shorten that time of where you're really feeling healthy.
I mean, this may be a leading question then. I guess, what is something that you find that's super frustrating with, you obviously you're putting in all this work to make soldiers into athletes, and I know that's a very oversimplification as well. But you're putting in all this work, and then hopefully you've probably seen the results with a handful of folks, maybe two handfuls of folks, which is awesome. But what's been your biggest frustration with you putting in this time, effort? Understand the Army's putting in this effort towards this H2F program that you're not feeling that you're getting back on. And I ask that because we can probably pick a bunch of handfuls of feel good stories of soldiers out there, but those are the soldiers that care. So how do you because I guess what I want to ask you before I just kind of lead you down that way is, like, how do you try to get those soldiers to care more? Like, what are you doing to try to show them, like, I know you want to go out and almost get blackout drunk every weekend because, like, that's what you think is cool to do when you're 21 years old, but you really need to, like, not do that, I guess, and come back and be ready to perform.
So I don't really look at it as a challenge because it is the problem set in itself. Like, that's what they are paying us to do. That's why they started H2F, is so we can start attacking all these problems, not just cardio or lifting. But that is the totality of what we're trying to bring to the table. And so I lost my train of thought on that one.
I apologize. No, it's okay. It's okay. So we were talking about the challenge. Like, I was asking you about the challenges of people that we're working for, because obviously, like, first sergeants and commanders come to you, or they may come to you, they may not, or whatever. But obviously, like, some soldiers come willingly. Some leadership come to you and say, hey, this group, they're just like, they're not bought in, they don't care about their fitness, they don't do, so how do you like, and again, like, I guess, like, how do you transform their mind? And that's probably saying a lot there, but like, how do you get them to start thinking like more about themselves, their health, and their fitness?
So if I go back to my own experience, like right, wrong, or indifferent, we were in a time of war. And so you had a very specific thing that you knew was coming. And especially, during the early 2000s, all the way, like I didn't really see the end of it, but you knew that was coming. And so there was a little bit more premium on investing that time in yourself. And so I was in an airborne unit, and so you were your own weapon. Like, and there was a huge amount of emphasis on you better be ready. Everybody who's coming in on the leadership side either had been 1, 2, 3 times, like whatever that looked like. There was these multiple deployments, and you knew what one was coming. And even before we're done with the first, the next one's already on the line. And so it put the onus on the soldier, like, this has got to matter right now. And I'm not saying everything was perfect, because we had a lot of people who still didn't take it seriously.
Right.
But I don't think we should live in wartime all the time just to maintain that sort of like overt readiness. But I think a little bit of that does get lost on younger people who just see what's in front of them. Like, the world is not getting more calm, like, as we see. During my time, you could have never convinced me we'd be fighting in tanks and trenches ever again. And sure enough, that's what we're seeing over there. Never in a million years would I thought that was a possibility. And so now, here at the armored unit, it's a little bit different problem set, because the vehicles are number one. But to me, we still don't have robots that are driving it all. There's not a drone tank. So we got to make sure that we're still taking care of the human capital as well. And I'm not saying we're doing everything wrong. It's just we can continue to develop there. That is a path forward where we can be better. And that's what I really try and lean into.
So when stories come out in the media where the Army seems to not be as thin as we should be, or as people think we should be, and as I'm not going to dig into the specific like statistics on like whatever's been kind of published within the last month or so. But do you see that, like, I guess, do you see that as a problem, and as far as not being in a physically fit form, and then how do you, I guess, oh man, I guess I don't want to say like transform like that to like get them, but do you see that as like an interesting challenge to try to take on, or do you not see it as a big a problem as maybe as like it's been portrayed?
Yeah. When I think about it, I think the Army population is a microcosm of society.
Right.
So the people that are coming to us are different than historically maybe they have been. And so we could either throw our hands up and say, man, we can't do anything about this, or we can do something about it. And so again, I go back to, if I can just make a soldier care, if we can start making them get these better lifestyle choices now, long term, we can turn that corner. If we have to tell a soldier who comes in that's grossly overweight and they do all these fad things to get within tolerance, the chances of them staying there are actually pretty small. Like, it just, fad diets don't work. That's why there's a new one every single year. Like, it just is what it is. And so long-term progress is where we have to go. It's the reality that we face. Like, I think we can still be quality war fighters. We don't need 8% body fat everywhere.
Right.
Like, that's not optimal for readiness and fighting long term, because when you do that, that low, they're starting to run into a lot of other issues that, maybe having a little bit extra is not so bad. Now, certainly there's a range.
Yeah.
We got to make sure that we're getting everybody possible within that range. I think everything kind of falls under a bell curve. So maximizing the people under the curve and not out on the peripheries, we're really where we have to go.
So I think nutrition's a big part of it, right? So I think, and like you said, if you're on social media, you'll hear all these things that is in these ultra processed foods, which are probably bad for you, or even just I guess what do you see as some of the biggest dietary problems, and what are your top 1 or 2 things? Like, if, hey, I know I'm asking you to probably do a lot here, but if you could cut out these things or limit these things, that this will help you more than you think. what are those? I know you're not a nutritionist. You wanted to be, but you're not.
Yeah.
But obviously you work with them all the time, and it's part of like what your program is meant to do. So like, what are you telling soldiers to, like, hey, try to stay away from this, and like, what is, I guess, yeah, just what are those things?
So everything in moderation, even moderation. I'm not going to tell them to just live off chicken and rice. Like, it's super convenient, at least for me, when, I don't have a lot of time during lunch. Like, I can just knock that out and keep moving on with my day. But you don't need to do that for the next 5 years of your life. It's probably pretty limiting. You're going to miss a lot of other things that you should be putting in your diet. But making that the mainstay, and then allowing yourself to have the other things. If your default is the quick, easy, probably chain style restaurant, that's going to be very limiting. Like, you can't out-train a bad diet. It's not possible. And so I'm
gonna write that down.
The emphasis on,
I wish I had a pen right here.
like, as many healthy foods as possible. Like, that's the number one to start. Like, that should be the crux. And the second is supplements aren't the end of the game. Like, the supplements cannot be everything. Like, my dietitian had somebody come in and just pull out his backpack and start unloading, unloading. Oh, no. And it was literally like hundreds and hundreds of somebody upsold him at GNC of everything that's going to fix every problem. Well, the reality is that's the final 1-2% of what your dietary needs are, and skipping to that and ignoring the first 98 is a huge miss. Get your macros under control and then go from there.
So,
and I'm not a dietitian.
Right.
Go see
Danny.
So
disclaimer,
he's a smart person.
The huge red banner says not a dietitian.
Thanks.
So
self-imposed.
But with that, like, if they're, obviously supplements are a big thing, and we do have people that work out, religiously, and that's a big part of their life. If they are to take, like, what's like the top supplement that you would say, like, hey, this is like if you're gonna take something, it's relatively harmless, but it's also really good. It will have like some of the biggest impacts. Like, what would that be? Or would you even just say, like, I don't even have one of those? I'm not asking you.
Again, like, not a nutrition expert. Right. Quality protein, if you need protein, creatine for brain health and just muscles in general, fish oils for your joints, and then a multivitamin for anything that you're missing. Like that, at least to me in my life, that's where I would typically go.
You're right.
There's probably a lot of other things that people need. Like, everybody's body's different, their diet's different, which is going to lead to deficiencies in different places. That's kind of where I live. Going with the most abstract root leaf extract from Antarctica. Like, humans have been around for a long time, so maybe they lived without that in Antarctica. So something to think about.
All right, so you talked about, you worked with a bunch actual D1 college football athletes, which, I would argue some of the most fit people that we have, at least like in that time period, and they're 18-year-old to mid 20s, like, those are our premier athletes, like, of that population that we're looking at, I don't know what the percentage is, but that percentage of people are trying to go play in the NFL, which is also another high, like those, you have like 350-pound dudes that run 4.9 40s, and you're like, I don't even know how that's possible, right? So, like, you're looking at premier athletes all the time and working with them, and you're just seeing, like, one, probably, not everybody's as invested, they're just blessed with genetics and whatever else, and you're seeing people that just, like, go, like, that's their focus. They know they need to be physically fit because there's a 250-pound linebacker that might clean their clock, and they need to be able to handle that. That is not the same population that you're working with here in the military. And I know we've kind of talked about a little bit of that, where we may not be the most physically fit generation as far as, like, what's been coming into the Army, which, I know that, obviously that's why you're here, is to help work with that. But what were, how, like, I guess, I don't know, I just feel like that's a weird dynamic to shift from. Was that, I don't want to say that's not weird for you, because you could probably mentally, like, I comprehend, like, well, I'm not doing that anymore, so I'm working with these soldiers. But how do you, I guess now, like, try to convince the soldiers that, like, you can be not that, but, like, get to that mindset or whatever?
I think the biggest carryover is purpose. Like, you have an entire building, an entire staff, everything is geared around one singular purpose. Like, you have to win. If you don't win, I don't have a job. Even sometimes in college football, when you do win, the coach moves and you can be out of a job. So every single Christmas is just like, waiting, like, am I going to have a job in January? But throughout the entirety of the year, as soon as you do make it to the January cut, You have a singular purpose through the whole thing, and the entire building is in one realm. And so the output for that is the games themselves. That's where we win. Well, here in the military, the output is the soldier health, the soldier lethality, the soldiers getting an entire career, not just 4 years to get to the NFL. So when we can do the things that you signed up to do, that's a win. Like that's where I put my focus is. That's what we're developing to. I don't need you to squat 1,000 pounds. It's actually probably going to be very limiting to your Army career if that's what you're doing that. But if you can stay healthy, if you can get the next generation when you become the NCO and you get the Joes to care about training, to care about their health, like that's how we move that whole kind of paradigm shift is like putting that focus on the singular goal, not just being here until my time's up.
Right.
That would be the focus I want, like having that purpose, having a why of why you're doing everything, because that's what's going to get you through the annoying times when you're going to have to do the early morning to go do gate guard, or not to trash the gate guards, but there are tasks that are less glamorous than what you signed up to do.
100%.
And so that's how you get through the inconvenient times is like, you know why you're still doing this. Like, you know, whatever that call's coming, it can come at any time. Like we didn't know until it happened. And so I think that's probably going to be the case with most conflicts.
I think that's very well said. If you can help the soldiers to find a purpose and to help them get, you know, there is a physical part. Like I always like to tell soldiers, you know, soldiers I get a lead. You know, physical fitness isn't something that we have to do. It's something we get to do because it's actually part of our job to a certain extent. Like we have to be physically able to do some of the things we have to do. So, you know, with that, Dean, I really appreciate you coming on. Like, this was great. I'm going to tell you, I have a Rolodex of questions that we're not going to get to today. So I would love to have you back on sometime here in the future. I think, you know, to me personally, I think health and fitness is probably one of the most common things that everybody knows every morning that you're going to do. And I still think there's a lot to learn, you know, from just the individual soldiers. And I'm so glad that you guys are here to do stuff like, you know, get us on the right track across the Army. So thank you very much.
If I could plug one thing, you know, for all the resource units with H2F, like obviously I care about Dagger. Dagger's like where I'm invested.
Right.
I've told the people, debatable. I fully believe I'm going to outlast every single person that's currently in the formation. And that's the benefit of having a civilian here is we're going to continue to develop this. So obviously Dagger is near and dear to me, but we have other H2F teams that do the exact same thing. We got great people. We got to sit in a meeting with the CG, and he asked all the brigade commanders, like, do you have the right civilians for the job? And I saw nothing but head nods. And so if there's one thing I can encourage, the Army's going to ask you to do a million different things when you're in leadership. Come help us take one of those things off your plate. Like, utilize us. Having our people on the shelf doesn't help anybody, but there's a lot of people we can help. So come find us.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you very much, Dean. I appreciate it. And like I said, we'll definitely have you back on here.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.